How's it going, everyone? In this video, we're going to be looking at illustration rares, and you don't want to miss this video because a lot of these illustration rares, some of your favorites, some of the best illustration rares that have been selling these past 6 months are actually experiencing price correction. So we're going to be looking at the Magikarp, we'll be looking at the Groudon, the Eevee, and not only that, but we'll also want to track their PSA 10 prices. That way we can see if there's any price corrections in the PSA 10 prices as well. And so we're going to go ahead and look at several of your favorite illustration rares, the highest to lowest in terms of value. And then on the second page, we'll look at the prices of the second page on TCG Player. I went from highest to lowest in terms of value for illustration rares. That way we can get a good idea at what illustration rares are at the top 10, what are in the top 20, and then there's so many illustration rares with Scarlet and Violet. And so we're going to look at some other illustration rares that possibly have some potential to see some runs in the future. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start off with the Magikarp right here from Paldea Evolved. And you can see from the yearly chart, 94% growth. Back here in May of 2024, it was a $109 card. And look at the sales volume. Like, you're still having on average 20 sales a day for this card. If we look at the past month, this card has dropped 12% from April 7th, $223 down to $196. So that's about a $25 drop. And if we look at the last 3 months, it's a 15% drop. You could see that it was on its way up last year into the high or low 200s in December, managed to get up to 234 in January, and then 276 in February. And so far, that has been the yearly high right here. February of 2025 has been the yearly high. You could see right there. And you were still having 20 copies of this card being sold for $250 and $265 in March. And ever since March, this card has been trending in the downward direction from $276 all the way down to $196 right here in May. And so yeah, you can see that it was on its way up, and then now it's just kind of price correcting pretty hard these past 3 months. So it is still a 15% drop in the past 3 months. Then we're going to go ahead and look at the Magikarp right here in the PSA 10. You can see that we have 2,346 PSA 10 copies versus 6,583 PSA 9s. So it's a very difficult card to grade. I've done videos on pull rates and gem rates as well for Paldea Evolved, I believe about a month and a half ago. And so, you know, gem rates are really low for these sets from Scarlet and Violet, and about 15% some of those illustration rares have. And then Paldea Evolved, similarly, you're looking at 15 to 20%. Most of the cards are below 30% in terms of gem rates. And so that's why these cards hold a premium in the PSA 10. You could see just this past month, it's been selling about in the thousands right here. A couple sales in the 17 and 1800s back here in April, when you know, illustration rares were still pretty hot. Everyone was still buying them. And now we're getting into May, and we have new sets coming out. Destined Rivals at the end of June, and then or is it at the end of May, sorry. And then now we have that new black and white Pokemon set coming out, the specialty set, which is going to feature 156 illustration rares and special illustration rares. So we'll just have to see what happens with these other illustration rares. Last confirmed sale was for $1,035. So pretty much still selling in the thousands for the past month, the low thousands. Next, we're moving on to the Groudon right here. We could look at the yearly chart. Yes, it's up 82%. You can see I had a big run up right here in December from $63 up to $99. Was staying around $100 throughout February and March, and is now price corrected down to $76. So again, another $25 drop. It's down 17% in the last month, and then 27% in the last 3 months. So experiencing some heavy price corrections. As we can see these past 3 months, it was selling in the low 100s and now selling at $76. But look at the volume. The volume is starting to go up a little bit right here. 14 copies and 12 copies right here. And so the average velocity is starting to increase for this card. If we look at the PSA 10s, it's selling for this past month in the upper to mid 300s. You could see that we had some sales right here for $392 at the end of April. Then we have some sales in the low 300s, mid 300s. And this last confirmed sale right here was not an auction. Someone bought it outright for $514. So that could be indication that maybe there's less on the market. For example, Pokedata.io, this website that I use for the data, this data for the PSA 10 is confirmed sales from eBay. And so here's the listing ID, and it'll take you to the listing. Oftentimes it says that it was just confirmed sold in green and everything, and you might not be able to see the product, but if you're on the eBay app, you could probably find the sold listings as well. Next, we have this Eevee from Twilight Masquerade. You can see that it's up the yearly chart 63% in the last year. You can see that it started trending up in December at $63, and then January it shot up to $95, and then January through February, early February, February 2nd to be exact, we had some confirmed sales for $104. So that was about 4 months ago, right? Almost basically 5 months ago. And so 34 copies sold for $104, and now it's trending in the downward direction all the way down to $64. And again, the velocity, you can see the velocity of sales. People were buying this card in now that it's hit the 60s. You have 30 copies right here on May 2nd, and then over here on early April, you have 50 copies sold for $64, 51 copies sold for $65. And so, yeah, the current market price is $64. And you can see that that is a 34% drop in the last 3 months. So that Eevee seeing some heavy price corrections right now. Pretty gnarly. And then if you look at the PSA 10 data, let's check it out. You can see right here throughout April, for the most part in the low 200s, high 100s. We have one for 165, 172, 187, 192. And then 190 in May, early May, May 1st. You have some sales right here, 190, 175, 160. And then now to this date, we have a couple sales for 172 and then also another one for $220. So you're looking at the low 200s to high 180s and 190s. And so interesting to see that this, for the most part, has stayed in the 200s for the last month of April. Next, we're going to be looking at some more illustration rares in order, again, of value on TCG Player. And so this is a relatively new card, right? We got that Squirtle from Stellar Crown. We're not going to be looking at the PSA data anymore. Check out Pokedata.io, but let's go ahead and check out what's been going on with this card. Past 3 months, we see a 23% drop for this Squirtle. If we look at the yearly chart, you know, in December it was selling in the 40s and 50s, and then in February 80s, and then in March the 60s, and then now May the low 60s. So we could see that it's kind of been experiencing the last, you know, heavy price corrections in the last 3 months. But again, that is not hurting the volume. This is more than the last cards we were looking at. We have upwards of 40 to 30 copies of this card being sold in the past 3 months. Almost daily. This is like every couple days you're having 30 copies being sold. So it's really great that TCG Player is tracking the velocity of this card, and obviously all cards now, but it's just a really cool feature to have now. Next, we have the Raichu right here, 30% gain in the last year, but look at this chart, absolutely crazy. You can see that it's skyrocketed right here in December and January, quickly from the 30s up to the mid 50s, and then now it's price correcting down into the low 50s. So not too much of a price correction for this card. 3 months ago, or the past 3 months, it's lost 8% of value, but in the last month it has picked up 1% or 2.67%. And so it's kind of recovering now. It's only lost about, you know, not too much of its value. And yeah, we could see that it's actually in the last month trending in the upward direction. April $50 and now May $51. So nothing too crazy, right? But we could see that the market price is starting to increase. Next, we have the Charmander from Scarlet and Violet 151, the set of all sets, the specialty set. Now, recently, it's been beaten by Prismatic Evolutions in terms of overall value. But let's look at the yearly chart real quick. We can see that this card has seen 100% gains in the last year. A year ago, it was selling in the 20s, managed to get up into the 60s, March 2025, and now it's, facing some price corrections that looks like it started around February. We see like 34 copies sold for $72, and then since February 26, it's been trending in the downward direction. We could see that now we're having sales in the high 40s and low 50s right here. So it's, it looks like it's starting to see a stabilization, or not even a stabilization, sorry. It looks like it's trying to figure out, should it be selling in the 50s or should it drop back down to the mid to low 40s? But it looks like that support line of $50 is a good support line. Look how volatile it's been in the last month, from $53, $46, again to $52. And that's just indicative that, the market and sellers and buyers are trying to see what price point it's going to be settling at. But because it keeps getting bought, more copies are being sold, and not too many actually. You have 9 copies, 77 copies right here on May 2nd. And so that's why we're seeing the volatility right there, and that's why you see it shoot up in price with that volatility right there. So look at that. It just literally jumped from $47 up to $52. And it doesn't sound like, a big deal, but when you have sellers on eBay or TCG Player who are noticing, okay, what cards are selling, who's the next cheapest seller that I need to compete with to sell my copies, because everyone's trying to run a business. I don't know if we call all these people scalpers or not. That's another thing to, keep in mind is, are all sellers just scalpers now because they have cards? I don't know. I'll let you guys decide. All right, next we have the Bulbasaur right here. A year ago, it looks like, for the past year, that's interesting. It's only down 3%. If we look at the past 6 months, it's up 6.8%. But then look at the last 3 months right here. And this is what we're kind of focusing on lately, because obviously if you bought this card back in January, hey, maybe you thought it was going to get more expensive. Maybe you weren't sure if there was going to be reprints for Stellar Crown, etc. But if we look, February and January, $67 was kind of the peak for this card. It looks like the all-time peak as well. It's dropped from $67 in January all the way down to $47 now in April. So that is a significant drop, 25%. But again, look at the volume. That's a good thing. If you're seeing 15 to 40 copies of this card being sold, you know for sure that eventually, maybe over time, that this card can get back up there in the 60s and 70s. But as of right now, it still continues to drop 14% in the last month, from $56 down to $48. Not too big of a drop, but a drop indeed. And you're still having several copies being bought, 12 copies for $48, and the price still continues to drop. Maybe the cards were overvalued, too many buyouts, it just depends on what people are willing to pay for a portion of time. And that's basically what these trends are, right? If people are willing to pay and there's more demand for a card, the price goes up. If less people don't want the card anymore, or the hype is over for those cards, then the prices could drop, and then it comes down to the supply as well. Next, we have this Squirtle, also from Pokemon 151. It's up 74% in the last year. In the last 6 months, it's up 9%. And if we look at the last 3 months, however, it's dropped 10%. You could see in March and February, it was selling around $50 to $56. And now it's dropped down to the low to mid 40s at $45. And so look at right here. We had 50 copies of this card sold for $41. And then the price started going back up from $41 to $45. So again, not a huge gain, but when people are selling these cards in volume, it can make a huge difference. Like if you're selling 10 more copies for $4 more, you're making $40, right? And so that's really important for these online sellers and stores everywhere, is that when Pokemon's doing well, you got to make those sales. And then if a card starts to lose hype, maybe you have to give your card at a discounted price, right? Next, we have the Persian card, one of those cards that saw an incredibly, really big jump from December in the 20s and November of last year. And then January, it hit 30s, managed to get up to $65 in February and $74. You had 63 copies bought at $74. Now, again, can this be buyouts and manipulation? Could it just be people really wanting the card and hyping and the card had so much hype that people were buying it? Could be a number of factors, but either way, and hopefully a lot of people warned you, not to be buying that card at such an expensive price. In February, it was $74, right? And now it's dropped to the 60s and 50s throughout March, and now $46 in April. And the market price is currently $44. Still a beautiful card that I want to add into the collection, as well as this Tyranitar. I used to have some Japanese copies of this card that I gave to some friends. If you look at the yearly chart, look at the volatility, look at the volume, you literally have back in January 69 copies, back in September of 2024 69 copies for $41, but then later in January $46. And so interesting prices right there, pretty volatile this past year. You can see it's had so many run-ups and then price corrections and then run-ups and price corrections. But let's look at the last 3 months. 12% drop in the last month, 11% drop, and in the last 6 months, 6% drop. And if we try to see when this card was at its peak for the year, this was back in March, $51, and now it's dropped down to $41. Let's look at the volume for the past month. You're still having about 2 to 8 copies being sold. If we look at the last 3 months, it was really big back in February. You had like more than 20 copies being bought, 15 to 20 every few days. And so the price went up from $46 all the way up to $51. And now it's dropped back down to $41 3 months later. Next, we have this Bulbasaur from Pokemon 151. It's up 77% in the last year. Pretty big gains. Up 6% in the last 6 months. If you look at the last 3 months, first, the volume. You're having 20 to 80 copies being sold currently right now in this current market right now. This is the end of April. $42, 81 copies sold. Now we're getting into May and the price still continues to drop. Now it's down to $38. So who knows? Were people collecting them? Were people trying to buy this card and get the price to go back up? Who knows? But, or maybe also people saw that this card price corrected back in March from $52 to $41, $42 in April. So like a month later. And maybe once people saw a $10 drop, maybe a lot of people just started buying the card. It's really hard to know exactly what's going on, but at least we have the volume to help us out. And so, yep, for the last month, trending in the downward direction from $44, $41 in April down to $38 right now. And you can see some people, there's a lot of sales happening, 36 copies for $38, and it's still a $38 card. So that might be something worth considering if you like the Bulbasaur card. Next, we have the Gastly, 82% gains in the past year. The last 6 months, it's up 45%. However, the last 3 months, it is down 23% from February, $58, all the way down now in May to $37. You can see that right here, we had 62 copies sold from April 30th to May 2nd. So about what? That's a 3-day span. 60 copies sold. That's a lot of copies, but it's still a $37 card nonetheless. So, the price hasn't moved too much, but it's definitely been dropping these past 3 months. 23% drop to be exact. Then we have the Maushold card. Interesting card. Really saw some big jumps if you see the past year. It was for the most part a $10 card last year in 2024. And then in December managed to get from $10 to $18, $20. And then January hit $25. February and March $31. And then now in May it's a $35 card. So this card is actually breaking the trend. It's actually up 13% in the last month. And in the last 3 months, it's up 7.4%. So, wow, incredible gains, $35 cards, $35 a card. And interestingly enough about this card is people were actually asking me when I was vending for the first time back in March if I had this card. And this card is actually continuing to go up. So, could be, a population report thing, could be gem rate related. I did a video on it. I just don't remember. It was about a month ago. All right, we're almost to the end, guys. We got about 2 more cards, I believe, or 1 more card. We got the Houndoom right here. It's up 37% in the last year. 62% in the last 6 months. But look, wait for this drop right here, guys. Here it comes. Right here in February, and in I think January was the all-time $50. Yep. And in the last 3 months, February it's dropped from $47 in March to $40, so it lost $7 in March, and then now in April, May, $34. So that is a 28% drop from $47 down to $34. So about a $13 drop in the last 3 months. Makes sense, right, with all the price corrections. And the volume is pretty good, though. You're having about 17 to 15 copies being sold these last 3 months. And the card still continues to go in the downward direction, which is honestly a great thing because this card is really, really cool. I actually pulled it when Shattered Fable came out, and it's in grading right now. So we'll find out if it gets graded. Next, we're just going to look at the second page, guys. You have the Curlia, $28 right here. You have the Monkey Dory right here, $27. Give me a second. Then you have the Heracross, $25. Articuno, surprisingly, $24. Not too bad for, it's a brand new card. But at one point it was like in the 40s when the set first released. But luckily, Journey Together pull rates were really good. Dragonair, $24. Riolu, super cool card. Really cute. Want to get it. $22. Sprigatito, $22. Fuecoco, $22. Psyduck, $20. The Dusknoir, really cool card. I want to get it. $21. The Dusclops, $21. Sawsbuck, $21. The Ceruledge now is a $20 card. This card was like a $30 card for the longest time, and now it's down in the 20s, so it might be something worth considering. We did get those reprints of Surging Sparks, so maybe that's what's helping. Plusle 19, Slowpoke 19, the Ninetales $18, not too bad for the Ninetales. Metagross 18, Tinkatuff 18, Yveltal $18. I want to get this card. I need to just get it already. I'm sure it looks really nice in person, but I want to get a really clean copy and maybe get that extended border if you've ever seen those for cards. Horsey 18, Chansey, Morpeko 17, Miss Magius from Paldea Evolved. Look at the illustration rares. This Cresselia I pulled, 16, the Deerling, Warlord, Poliwhirl in the 16s. All of these cards right here in the 16s and 14s. These cards right here in the 13s. Arbok, Magby, Vanillish, the Litten, $13. When are we getting an Incineroar? Here are some awesome cards that I personally want to get some more of. The Ends Reshiram, the non-stamp, $12, and the Infernorape, $11. I believe the stamped promo from Journey Together, has it dropped? I believe it dropped to like $10. Where's the third page? We were just on it. Here's the one without the stamp. Is it all the way on the fourth page? That is absolutely crazy. Right here, $10, you guys, for the stand promo. I did get a copy when it got down into like the 18, 19s. So it was like $21 with tax. The Caesar, beautiful card. So you guys, there is still a ton of cards for you to collect. The illustration rares have finally calmed down. Price corrections have definitely been happening, especially for those most popular cards right here at the top. So watch in the next 3 months. You want to see 3 months of just stable price points, or maybe we'll see price points continue to drop. It just kind of depends on, what is everyone buying? What is everyone chasing? Are people looking to just open a bunch of Destined Rivals? It seems like we'll get a lot of we're gonna have some decent, it looks like some people are saying that we're getting enough as Journey Together. Some people are getting less than Journey Together. Some people are getting less than they got on Surging Sparks and Journey Together, like less allocations. We'll just have to wait and find out, guys. Now, if you're looking here to invest, I would say you got to stick with the most popular species of Pokemon and the most expensive cards. So I would say probably anything in this top 10 right here, maybe even the Persian or Tyranitar. Me, personally, I'm going to go after this Groudon and Magikarp. I'm going to watch them closely in the next 3 months and look to get a couple copies of each, because these are clear front runners as of right now. Until we get Destined Rivals, we'll see how that Misty Psyduck does, and the Ethan's Typhlosion, and whatever else illustration rares from the Destined Rivals Glory of Team Rocket set mixed together with the Hot Air Arena or Heatwave Arena. That's all I have, everyone. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.